environmental justice. Oh, there you go. The farmers movement in Northwest India. Navdeep is currently studying the contemporary peasant movement against the 3 farm laws introduced by the Indian government last year. He aims to investigate the changes in the rural landscape and agrarian distress in villages of Haryana. Navdeep has also been an active participant in the farmers' protests against the farm laws that intended to further liberalize the rural economy. So it is both in these capacities as a scholar and as an activist that he will talk to us today. The reason why I invited, we had the idea to invite Navdeep to talk to us is because the farmers' protests is a rare story nowadays of a grassroots movement that successfully mobilized against very powerful sectors, at least for the time being. So I thought it would be very important for us outside of India to understand what happened and to learn something from this movement. So I really appreciate everyone who is joining us. I would also like to remind you that we have a lecture next month. Also, it will be on the last Thursday of March. So it will be on the 31st of March at the same time, 5 p.m. Berlin time. And it will be, our guest will be Gina Cortez Valderrama, and she'll be talking about gender just climate solutions, bottom-up approaches to systemic changes. And so, so you can already put that, mark that on your calendar. And also you'll be able to register soon if you can join our newsletter, and so you will get more information about that and other cool stuff. So for now, let's listen to our guest Navdeep. He will talk for about 40 minutes or so to explain us what happened in India and what's at stake. And then we will open for questions. You can raise your virtual hands once the Navdeep finishes this presentation, and he will take questions. So yeah, Navdeep, welcome here to our lecture series. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello, greetings to you all who have joined here today. So first of all, I would like to thank IESS for organizing this lecture series and showing so concern for the organizing this talk over the farmers' protest in India and the agrarian crisis in India. And thank you, Bernardo, for coordinating this talk. So I would like to just share my screen for this talk. So is it visible, available? Okay, fine. But I can't. Okay, fine. So this will be the overview of my talk. And first, I will talk about the present state of agriculture in India. And second, I will draw the analysis of the previously existing acts for the trading the farm produce. and then I will analyze. I will be analyze and understanding the new farm laws and the three acts of 2020 as a new agrarian policy for India. Next, we will see the socio-political analysis of initial building phase of the movement, and then we will discuss the my observation during the course of the movement, and later we will discuss the issues of environment and sustainability in the Indian agriculture. So I will try to demark the traditional, cultural, and religious and the impact of the agrarian transition throughout the struggle of the through this struggle of the farmers. So basically, the data for this is primarily accumulated by observing the farmers' protest at various sites, and I was also protesting there at the protest site for about 9 months, and actively participating and observing the movement. And then during the process, I had discussion with the farm union leaders and the protesters, and various other issues we discussed related to the movement and the functioning of the farm unions and the transition in the agriculture after, especially after the neoliberal or after the Green Revolution era. So the present state of agriculture in India, if we see, is agriculture with the allied sector is the largest source of livelihood in India. Around about 70% of the population in India is living in the rural areas. So mostly they are all are depending on the agriculture only. So in this who are cultivating, out of this 72% of the farmers are the small farmers owning around about 1 hectare of land, or the marginal which owns less than 2 hectares of land. The major issues about the economy, Indian economy, if we talk about, India has diversified and grown its economy, but the agriculture contribution has steadily declined. If we talk about the 1950s, the post-independence time, agriculture was contributing around 54% of the country's GDP, and now in the latest in 2021-20, it is around 20%, and it was further less during the pre-COVID time. It was around 15 to 70%, and as because during the COVID time, only the agriculture was the sector in the Indian economy that shows some positive figures. Next, the Indian population, Indian production is estimated around 305 million tons in 2021. Despite this high production, the agrarian yield, that is the quantity of crop produced in the one unit of land, is lower than as compared to countries like China, India, and Brazil. So in India, it is around 2,100 kg per hectare. So this is the production in India. As you know, the agriculture productivity depends on the several factors. We see which includes the factors. The input factors will be the quantity of the agriculture inputs we take, such as land, water, seed, fertilizers, access to the credits, crop insurance, assurance of, especially in India, the assurance for the remunerative prices for the crop is the main thing, and the storage and market infrastructure side by. So in India, the agriculture production is characterized in three ways. First, the resource intensive crops, and the agriculture is more cereal centric. And thirdly, the regional bias. There is somewhere where the soil is more fertile, so there is a diversity, we can say. The resource intensive have raised serious sustainability questions here in India, especially the increasing stress of water, and also the overuse of chemicals in the form of pesticides and fertilizers. So this definitely needs a rethinking of the agrarian policies in India, and we need a investment with this vision ki how we can uh, overcome these crises. So this is the present state of agriculture in India, and now if we talk about the historically, I'm talking about the post-independence time, ki how the especially the market system have evolved itself. So this is actually the post-independence time during 1950s or around and before around 40s and 1950s in India, the farmer cycle of debt. So after independence, farmers were directly selling their produce to the consumers, and due to the existence of the landlord system, which later was abolished after after the independence, the zamindari system we said, and they were actually the money lenders to the farmers. So farmers were mostly under the debt of these money lenders, because farmers have to took loan from these lords and at high rate of interest, and they couldn't repay that amount. So these money lenders bought their produce at very low prices, and in the next season when he need again the money for the input cost, then again he took the loan from these money lenders, and so it was a cycle of debt for farmers, and they were exploited by the lords. In India we call them shahukars. So to solve the problem of the farmers exploitation, the government of India then introduced the APMC, the Agriculture Produce Market Committee Act in 1963. Now, according to this act, farmers can directly sell their produce, cannot sell their produce to anyone, but they have to trade in this market yard, and farmers have to sell their produce within this yard only. And to a licensed man, we call it locally called RTRs. And after the APMC Act, for the farmers for the first time received the receipt. And this was the receipt, if you can see on the slide above is the picture of a Mandi receipt dated 2nd June 1966. So one of my friend's grandfather has kept it. It was for the first time that they got a receipt for their trade and produce. I have to minimize this thing. So in India, the states, provinces have their own APMC mandi and specify a particular mandi for that reason. So if a trader have to acquire, the trader have to acquire a license for that particular mandi. Mandi is the market yard. Similarly, a farmer also have to sell his produce to that specific market yard only. And so this was the system of trade in the agriculture sector. So now how the produce is sold in the APMC market yard. MSP is the one way, and second is the price discovery method. So in MSP is the minimum support price. It is decided by Government of India. In the during the pre-sowing time, they will decide and they declare that the government declares the MSP for that particular produce. So India actually announced for 22 crops it announced, and no auction is allowed in this MSP system. And but for the other crops like the perishable goods and vegetables, we say the goods are sold on the basis of the price discovery method. The prices depends on the market, the demand and supply thing. But if we see in reality, this is not the case. Out of these 22 crops on which the MSP is given by the government, only wheat and rice are procured at prices that is on the MSP. So wheat and rice is the important crop here in the MSP procurement system. So actually this is the farm produce supply chain in the APMC. The farmers are the producers, mostly the upper landowning class. They sell their produce to the middlemen, the RTRs, in the specified market yard. The middleman then negotiates the price with the trader and keep his commission and sell it to the traders. The traders then sell it to the wholesaler to the retailer, and finally the retailer to the consumers. and all of them, they keep their own share, and by the time it reaches to the consumer, the prices become highly inflated. So these are the middlemen actually, the RPRs. If we, according to the new farm policies, the RPRs are the middlemen and who got their commission during the trade. Now these are the three farm bills. Interestingly, if we see the corporates like Adani has sponsored the event during the presentation of these with the agriculture minister who explained in this conference the uh, positive side of this policy. And you must be knowing him, the Adani, where in Australia people are fighting against him. There is this say fight for our reef movement in Australia to stop Adani wrecking for their reef, they say. So this is the first act. So according to this act, the farmers can sell their produce directly to the institutional buyers at prices to be agreed upon between them without any tax. Now, this will be difficult for the APMC, the cooperative markets, to sustain and compete with the private buyers. This act will also allow the barrier-free trade, intra and interstate trade. Earlier, the farmers were only have to sell their produce within that market yard only, and there was no restriction on the farmers to sell. But accordingly, there was earlier also during some of the reforms in 2003 and the coming of the ENAM Mandi electronically and through online auction, they can also sell their produce anywhere. But more or less, they are happy with this system only, and they are selling their produce to this market yard through their own family RTRs. Now the farmers, this is the second bill, the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on the Price Assurance and Farm Services. This act also promotes the contract farming. This law will allow the farmers to enter into agreement with the agri firm to produce a crop for the pre-agreed price. And now this instills the fear in the farmers that they will get the less prices, as they'll get below MSP if they will be linked into this contract system with the corporates. And this is the most talked about law, the third law of the Essential Commodity Act. It proposes to allow economic agents to stock food articles freely with no limit. And this unlimited stocking can lead to the artificial fluctuations. In this law, they have given this thing: stock limit may be imposed if only there will be 100% increase in retail price of horticulture produce and 50% increase in the retail price of non-perishable agriculture food items. So this gives the immense control of the rates of essential food items to the corporates directly. And there will be they say there will be some artificial inflation and artificial rate will be there according to the corporates. Now, why farmers are unwilling to trust the central government and agricultural reforms? Because farmer organization in Punjab and Haryana, they have started their protest right when these laws were passed as ordinances during the COVID lockdown. And here the government promised the farmers will have full freedom so that they can sell their produce anywhere out in the market beyond their APMC mandi. Now farmers argue here that these acts do not delivering any freedom to them, but they are for the capitalists, and they will benefit only the corporates only and not the farmers. So for many years, overall many years, farmers were protesting and demanding reforms in the functioning of the APMC, that you should reform. They are asking government to reform the APMC laws. But now the farmers themselves, they are fighting to restore the primacy of the mandi in the agriculture trade, because the mandis are the essential part of the public agricultural trading ecosystem for the farmers. So now, this will be the market, the cycle, the supply chain, if these new farm laws will be applied. So this is the generalization. So now farmers can directly sell their produce to the institutional buyers, and a single corporate company like the Adani Group can take over the other structures like the APMC mandis, the middlemen, the traders, and the wholesalers, and sell directly to the consumer. Thus, can make a large profit through this supply chain. Now, what are the demands of the protesting farmers? The main demand of farmers is just to repeal these three farm laws, and they are demanding to strengthen the MSP, the minimum support price, so it will become the legal right for every farmer and for every crop. And farmers are demanding that the existence of the cooperative mandis is most important, and they need reforms in the functioning of that mandi rather than its completely removal. And because it will leave them without any safety net, and the farmers will be in the hands of corporates only, and the government must also ensure the gap is filled with foolproof mechanism, so to ensure the timely payments to farmers to avoid any cash crunch. So this is their demands. Now, who are protesting? The protests are majorly seen in the northwestern states, the Punjab and Haryana. This is actually the green revolution belt of India, where the green revolution technology were first introduced here in this region. So most of these farmers were growing wheat and rice only, and farmers make assured income through the procurement of wheat and rice on MSP by auction in the APMC. Now, farmers growing wheat and rice have full faith in the mandis of the mandi, the private mandis are the market yards of Punjab, and with assurance of MSP and timely payments. That's why the area of wheat and rice monopoly were actually protesting more aggressively against this law. So this is my finding through the statistical abstract resources. I could find the production of the particular crop, say wheat and rice. So mainly the districts which have significant numbers in production of the wheat and rice only, those districts are more aggressively participating in these protests. Now, the initial phase of the farmer protest, actually this was in Punjab and Haryana only. The farmers organization in Punjab have made it anti-corporatization, and the axis was around the corporates only. So, and only they have targeted the Reliance and the Adanis only. So they mass burned the Reliance Jio SIMs, and they sloganed with hashtags like Ambani Adani go back. And in Punjab and Haryana, in both the states, the major protest sites were the toll plazas throughout the states. So farmers didn't allow any toll tax to be taken by the government. They blocked the railway tracks, and they blocked the Adani cold stores. They sat on the dharnas on the Reliance petrol stations, and residents of the BJP, the ruling party leaders, and railway linking thermal power plants. Now, if we see the impact of Sikhi and the revolutionary culture of Punjab. Now, Punjab is the history of the social movement, has a strong history and rich culture, and the impact of Sikhism is the another factor that mobilized people. So in the movement, we have seen there were nukkads and film screening. Nukkads are actually the plays where the street plays, we say. Film screening and the various other means were used by the organizers to convey their message to the people. Food for people in the protests were provided by the langars, and the singer from the pop culture to join the agitation and produce song concerning the farmer struggle. Now, the women in the farmer protest were participating only at the unions, the farming unions, which have raised the women issues earlier. Like this is the yellow scarf they are having. This is the dress code of we say Bharatiya Kisan Union Ugraha. So this is the particular union that have earlier also they raised the women issues, and the leadership roles are absent throughout the movement. But they can be the women can be seen giving speeches and managing states. So the Basanti, Kesari, and the green dupatta. This is the dress code of the different unions. So this is how the women participated in this protest. Now the caste and class participation. The protest continued to address the issues of zamidars, the land owning class, which is mostly the Sikh Jats community, and it failed to address the landless and the workers, laborers unions. So we see only a limited participation, but there is solidarity among the labor union also. Some of the farmers organizations have seen the land reforms as their long-term goal. So it is was no, not mentioned anywhere in the demands of the protesting farmers. Although the movement began with the slogan Kisan Mazdoor Ekta, which means the workers and farmers unions long live. But we have seen it faded away simply as the movement further proceeds. The another states, the provinces beyond Punjab is Haryana. This is my native state. So farmers were protesting at various districts under Bharatiya Kisan Union. This is the Indian Farmers Union, the umbrella union of the state. The majority of those who are protesting are the khud caste. Khud caste are the cultivators, the self-cultivators who cultivates on their own land and who take their produce to the nearest market yard by own. And the protesting farmers were mostly belonging to the land-owning class, which is Sikh Jat and Jats. So Bharatiya Kisan, the BKU has successfully mobilized farmers in the Sikh belt of Haryana. Now, observation of movement in the second state is the intensity of the protesters is low in the central region. And there is no participation of agricultural labor, and only the land owning upper class were protesting initially, and no women participation is observed in the Haryana state, but it was there in the Punjab. And youth participation is less as they didn't find any farming, any profitable job for them. And BKU Haryana has been putting great efforts to unite farmers and peasants along the RPRs are the middlemen who were there in the APMC and the agriculture labor throughout the state. Now, so far the outcomes of the protest, till the initial phase I'm talking about, the such type of movements and protests have created awareness among and the conscious, encourage the people to participate on the important issues that can directly shape the national level policies. And Punjab government have also passed a bill. After seeing the initial phase, they have legalized the MSP on the wheat and rice crop. And Kerala is the first Indian state that have fixed the MSP for vegetables. And one important thing happened during this phase is the Sanयुkt Kisan Morcha. This is a farmers joint was formed by all the farmer unions of Punjab, and few unions from the Haryana also joined the joint front initially. And farmers have then planned to march to Delhi on the 25th of November. So this was the first phase of the movement. Now this is the second phase, the main mobilization. So the organization of the region, the Punjab and Haryana state were working on the grounds in villages, campaigning to reach wide mass of peasants to fight against the government and the corporates. The main worry of the peasants and the farmers was a worry of the MSP that was placed during the Green Revolution that gave the price assurance to the farmers. So initially, it was the movement of older generation, say the farmers above 50 years were participating. But as they have been, because they were associated with some or the other union, they were associated with. So, but the role of the Punjabi pop culture singers was very important to involve the youngsters. And the immediate cause when the youngsters joined the movement was when they were moving towards Delhi, they were marching, there was direct tussle against the police. So that ignited the courage of the youth. As it was winter season, so the North Indian farmers, they modified their load trolleys as comfortable and movable shelters for them. So they can set their camps in Delhi, and they also carried their rations with them. For they carried their rations for around 6 months initially, and they left their villages on 25th and 26th of November 2020. So this was actually the pictures taken during their movement, the initial day they were moving from their villages towards Delhi. So this is the Delhi Chalo move to Delhi march, and the how the state reacted to it is I will explain. I'll try to explain in this slide. So farmers on their way to Delhi to demonstrate their protest were hurdled by the police and restricted by citing that the COVID-19 protocol is there. So farmers must, the farmers were very much determined to reach the capital, but they faced the tear gas cell, the water cannons, the police batons. Even the roads were digged and the heavy barricading were made so that the farmers cannot move towards Delhi. And but they were more or less after tussling, after having a 2 day of tussle, they finally reached the Delhi borders on 27th of November. Initially the government refused them to protest at Jantar Mantar. Jantar Mantar is actually the designated site to stage any protest. And but farmers and then instead of that, the government asked them to join a site which was in Delhi, but in a deserted zone. But farmers refused to go there. So wherever they were on their way, they occupied the highways at Delhi borders, and then the borders became their homes for an year. And initially, the three borders, the Singhu, named Tikri, and Gazipur, were the main protest site. And later, two more sites were blocked by farmers of bordering states of Delhi and bordering states of Delhi, that is Western UP and Rajasthan. They came and joined the protest a week later. So their trolleys became their home, and Singhu border, actually the border between Haryana and Delhi, became their headquarters. The major problem of the drinking water, cleanliness, and the toilets were sorted out with time. It took time, but somehow they managed, and they also dug pits for the toilets. Farmers also named the areas and zones of the protest site and called it their village. The name were given after the fighters of the freedom struggle and the Sikh history. The regular cleanliness was maintained to avoid the spread of disease like cholera, malaria, and dengue, which was very much common in that zone of Delhi. Now, the essential supply for the protest. The food was served in langar. Langar is a folk management social practice in Sikhism of serving free food to all. So the food was served through langars, and the ration supply was regularly supplied by farmers of the nearby areas. And also when they were commuting back from Punjab to the area, they were like they got their rations with them. So there was the back and forth movement from their villages to the protest sites. And also many NGOs came forward to provide the other basic necessities like clothing and blanket for winters. The Khalsa Aid, a big NGO, set up a big store to provide toiletries and other essentials. Washing machines were also installed to wash their clothes, and free hospitalization and medical services were also provided. Also, many NGOs, they also set up some shelter homes for the visitors, and sometimes for the refreshment, some juice, pizza, fruits, and dry fruits were also distributed during the protest timing. Now, the role of Sanयुkt Kisan Morcha. This is the umbrella front of the farmers organization. So SKM weekly called their meetings to plan the activities and the programs on the important days, such as the Bharat Bandh, close India coal, then to stop the trains on their railway tracks, and the birth and the death anniversaries of the important historical leaders from the Indian history and from the Sikh history. This was also given to, these calls were also given to involve people from entire country, so that they could also register their participation in the movement from their far off places, as farmers were also protesting throughout country at different places, and they can't reach Delhi. So through these calls, they can also like participate and register themselves in their in this movement. Now this was the main event which is mostly talked about for this protest, the tractor parade or the Republic Day parade of the farmers. Now to celebrate the Republic Day, Sanयुkt Kisan Morcha has given a call of tractor parade in Delhi along with the national celebration of the Republic Day. The police again used violence, and the protesters and the police got clashes, and a section of protesters, they reached the Red Fort and hosted the Nishan Sahib flag. The Nishan Sahib is the flag of the Sikh Gurudwaras. Now this incident became propaganda to label Sikh as separatists and the anti-nationalists. Now the state started their propaganda to demonize and to end the movement. First, the ruling party tried to create a divide between the two main states, Punjab and Haryana. So they raised the historical issue. There was some dispute of the water sharing between Haryana and Punjab. So the ruling party of the state, they raised this issue to divide the unity. They were creating anti-Sikh wave through media and labeling Sikh as the Khalistani separatists. And they were also provoking protesters by calling them anti-nationalists. And sometime or the other, the BJP members, they also came towards the protest sites they created some violence, and they said we will use the violence to vacate the protest sites. Now the support of farmers protest was seen worldwide, if you say. So mostly the prominent personalities like Rihanna and Greta and Mina Harris, they tweeted in favor of the protesting farmers. But this was not taken in a good sense by the Indian government. So they asked different celebrities to condemn these tweets, and they also tweeted in their reply stating this is the internal matter that no one should involve in our internal matter. And some of the extremist groups of the ruling party, we say, they burned the images of the Greta Thunberg and Rihanna. And there was one incident also in Delhi police station. They have also launched an FIR against Greta Thunberg for sharing this tweet, citing it will be causing some threat to the nation's security or things like that. Now, 1 year of the struggle, the farmers, especially the aged, faced bitter cold and the monsoon rains, and during the pandemic, they stood very strong to stop the entry of the corporates. The end of the protest and the farmers, the Sikh Kisan Morcha actually, it announced the lifting of the Morcha at the Delhi borders when the government accepted all their major demands of the farmers. So after protesting for 378 days, the Sikh Kisan Morcha asked farmers to lift the Morcha, and initially they said that we are declaring the suspension of the agitation, not the complete end. The fight for their minimum support price will be there, and it will be continue in the time to come. Now, one of the major demand. This was also one of the major demand of the farmers to. There was a case going on regarding the stubble burning. So they were also demanding to decriminalize the stubble burning issue. So the Supreme Court have given a verdict on November 2021. And in that verdict, they talked about lack of the economic incentives for farmers. That is, the government is doing to restore. The government should restore the mechanization methods, and instead of like they are targeting the farmers, they should invest in the mechanization process so that the farmers can go away. Like he can then instead of stubble burning, he can use it the stubble in for some good use. And Supreme Court further stated that it's the responsibility of the state to develop technology and to deliver the same to the for the management of the stubble. Blaming the ignorant people for management is too lame an excuse for their own failure. This was stated by the Supreme Court of India. Now, if we talk about the diversification of the agriculture in Punjab, in 1960 and 61, initially there were around 21 crops were there in the cropping pattern of the state. But that fell down to 9 crops at the present time. And all these are water intensive crops. And the farmers use huge amount of inland water for these crops. Like rice has replaced many of the native crops of Punjab, and it is in the continuity. So every year more and more farmers are shifting to grow rice, and it has also assured income through MSP, and thus every year the matter of stubble burning is in more concern. So more people are like growing rice now for the assurance of their income. So the stubble burning issue is raising year by year. So the diversification of the crops is not happening on the ground due to the income concern mostly. So it need a major rethinking, and we need to have a movement from below how we can diversify the cropping pattern of these major states like Punjab and Haryana, the green revolution belt states. The policy need to be in a viable, as we also have to feed the population of 1.3 billion people. Now, Punjab has been India's breadbasket, and it is facing ecological distress and the greed for more profit by the farmers who are not well educated. They use the additional doses of the pesticides and the fertilizers. So it has also created a cancer belt in the state. The Batinda zone is termed as the cancer belt because a lot of people are suffering from the cancer. The main reason for this that could be the overuse of the chemicals and fertilizers in the crops. Now, the entry of the corporates would have further enhanced these environmental crises. So it is now a major concern of the farmers as how to save the fertility of the soil and the sustainability of water for their future generation. And this is the big fight they have won. They have stopped the entry for now, but as of now, the unions have become more and more stronger. So we'll see how the government will negotiate with the farmers and how they will come into talks with the farmers. So the next bills or the next laws which will come up as a enhanced neoliberal policy. So the farmers are ready, and they have also made their union strong. So they are now actually asking for every policy to be made for the farmers. They are asking government to involve farm leaders in the committee who will be setting up any of the further farm policies for the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Navdeep, for this very interesting presentation. And I have a much better understanding of what happened in India. I will start with the first question, just to get it started. I would like to understand better. You mentioned several times the Green Revolution, and that this region is known as the Green Revolution Belt. I would like to understand a little bit better if you could just tell us what it entailed exactly. Maybe some people are not familiar with the term Green Revolution. It's not very environmentally friendly. And also, what was the impact, the social impact? Because it's interesting that there is a strong union tradition in this region. So how is it that there was the Green Revolution and that went side by side with the farmers organizing in unions? And also a related question is, because these bills were reversed, so we have the status quo, but how sustainable both environmentally and socially is the status quo if it's still based on this reality forced by the Green Revolution, as you have explained? So yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about the Green Revolution.
So yeah, so thank you for asking.
And then just to tell, and people, please think of questions, and you can raise your hands and we will open for questions.
So during the after the independence, I'll say, so when the Britishers left India during the colonial time, so India was facing a lot of famines during that time, mainly because the Britishers, they have totally commercialized the agriculture, like the native cereal crops that go vanished, and they have introduced some cash crops like the sugarcane, the tea, and other horticulture, indigo, jute, cotton into the Indian agriculture, and the cereal crops, they got vanished. And so due to that, there were a lot of famines during the Britishers' time. And when India got independence, still there was shortage of the food crops. And so primarily to become a food secure nation, India started introducing the new technologies with the help of the Western countries like USA. They asked some of the USA, like Ford Foundation, they asked to come to India and to investigate, to do the survey, so how then they can improve their food, how they can attain a food security. So with the Ford Foundation, they did the survey, and they just highlighted a few areas and few zones. And in that zone, Punjab was one of the states, because the land holding in that state comparative to the other states of India was very high. It was around 9 hectares per person, the land holding was there. And also the Punjab is called the land of 5 rivers. So irrigation was easily was of was available for the crops. So the farmers were then introduced with the new technologies, the new irrigation facilities, new seeds were given to them, new fertilizers were introduced, and canal system was made. And with the time, when the normal borlogs, the magical seeds, they say, they were introduced into the this zone, the green revolution is called to be started, because their production their production increased substantially. So initially, when the farmers were producing, they could get only 10 months of 10 months is 40 kg of the scale the Indian used at that time. So the production was increased substantially due to the introduction of these technologies, and this was the at that time this was the region, the Punjab and Haryana region, and in with the help of technology and with the help of the seeds, they could get the high production. And also they have also introduced this minimum support price system, so the farmers could get the assured income through the MSP by selling their produce through the MSP. So wheat and rice at that time was given more importance, and this was actually a manufactured consent by the government for that was manufactured by the government for the farmers to produce more and more cereal crops, so that the India can become a food secure nation. So earlier, India have to import from the food grains from being a agrarian nation. India have to import the food grains from countries like USA. So now to create food sovereign state, they introduced some technologies. So in the areas that selected, that was called the Green Revolution Belt actually. And after becoming the food secure, then government started pulling off its hand, and their profit margins through MSP was reducing abruptly. So farmers who were getting the more profit, they were starting the profit was got reduced. So then in that case, some of the unions the unions were formed, so they can negotiate with the government. So it was in 1980s for the first time some of the farmers union that were formed. Earlier, whenever there were any peasant movement, that was totally for the land tenancy right was there. So when the government introduced and they abolished the land reform system, so those type of movements got reduced, and now the farmers unions, they were directly fighting for their rights to form the better policy which will be profitable for them. So then the MSP war and the timely payment war by the farmers against the state started. And one of the main mass movement that was seen was in 1980s under the leadership of the same BKU, whose offshoots are now have become like in dozens in Punjab area. So Bharatiya Kisan Union, it was initially formed in Haryana state, but later on that the leadership was shifted towards the western UP. It is state near Delhi. So there western UP, Haryana and Punjab at that time also fought battle against, they fought mobilization against the government to provide better MSP and to provide the subsidies on fertilizers and to provide subsidies on the electricity, which slowly government is pulling back after attaining the food security. So government was pulling back from the subsidy, so they mobilized again. And after the neoliberal reforms, we couldn't see any of the such movements. But there were fragmented movements. We can see the farm unions. They were protesting against the farmer suicide, and there was also one major concern. We say the farmers were given the credits after the neoliberal reforms. The credit and the indebtedness among the farmers was very high. Then their protest shifted towards the indebtedness. The government should rebate their loans. They should get away with the loans which are given to the farmers. So the government should not apply such high interest on the farmers. And after this movement, I would say there is some unity established again among the farmers of the three states, that Western UP, Haryana, and Punjab. Initially, there were disputes, like I have talked about, among the farmers of Punjab and Haryana. There were disputes of the water. The Punjab have like 3 rivers, and the farmers of Haryana want to share the water from those rivers, and so that kind of disputes that got sorted. And the farm unions, they have become more powerful as of now, as they were earlier. And they have the farmers also, they have fought a big battle. So now they can also, if in future they'll see any such crisis, then they can also again unite and they can fight back.
Thank you for this. Do we have any questions for the audience? Yeah, we have one here from Diana Sousa. So please, Diana, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I think it was very interesting. I wonder a bit what we can learn, or how it spread like beyond the agriculture sector. If you think about other aspects, for example, when you think about renewable energies and local communities getting started with creating their own projects, can you say a little bit like, you know, if it unfolded and what it means maybe for the empowerment of communities, for the empowerment of people beyond the agriculture sector? Maybe any thoughts what it could mean, like, you know, if people really come together and take more actions in general in their hands and stand in for their rights and for important topics affecting them. Thank you so much, Navdeep. I hope you can understand my question. If not, yeah, you can ask back.
So you were asking about like if people can engage more into the renewable energy beyond agriculture. You asked, if I'm right.
Exactly. So what it implies, right? If it stayed in the agriculture sector, if you have any lessons or implications coming from this movement from agriculture, and if it spreads also to other sectors, to other topics like energy, or I don't know, local ecological protection of habitats, I don't know, whatever it could be. Thank you for sharing some thoughts.
No, actually, this thing is going on in India since the farmers were earlier also, they were protesting against the electricity bills. So now the government also and farmers also want to shift towards the renewable energy, like the solar energy, and through that they can irrigate their plants, through that they can generate energy. And so there will be a low input cost for their farming inputs, and government is also putting a lot of efforts, I would say, to provide renewable and cheap electricity through setting up some of the solar panel systems into the farms of the small farmers, small land holding farmers. So and beyond that, I didn't see if the movement was as much impactful. It was all overall related to the farm bills, and in the I don't find any connection beyond that. One such was we can also relate it to the stubble burning. So farmers were also demanding to use the stubble so that they can use it in some other form of energy. And there were some cases that the technology, some of the scientists in India, they have produced, they are working on it. The stubble burning, they want it to be converted into some manufactured coal kind of thing. So this could be the case, and but overall these things were discussed among the farmers of the states. But how could it be? How could it? I can relate. I didn't find any solution for now. Guneet.
Hi, I thought I'll just add a little, if Bernardo and Navdeep don't mind, to Diana's question. In terms of, I think that like within the protest did start a conversation about like a more ecological thinking about how we grow our crops. I think that conversation, and within Punjab, for example, I did for the first time, because there was an organization of youth-led movements that was sort of getting organized around this protest. We also saw the same youth movements then also going up and showing up for places where communities were protesting against destruction of forests in Punjab. So there's this like Matewara forest near Ludhiana city in Punjab, and you had the same organization that was there at the farmers' protest also showing up there. So there was like for the first time this connection of like, which is a very indigenous conception, but like also you found something similar within at least the Punjabi community, or the Sikh community, which was the connection of spirituality with ecology and farming, that how we need to treat farming as something bigger than us. We need to treat the land as something bigger than us, which was completely counter to the thinking of green revolution, which was let's inject them with a lot of pesticides and drugs and get as much as we can from the land. But yeah, I mean, like Navdeep said, those are very long processes, and I think we'll only see in future how much they sustain or they take over. But that was, at least in Punjab, we saw that building up a little bit into into other movements also.
Thank you for that, Gunit. Do we have any other question? Anybody has any other question? Well, I do have one question, Navdeep. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the transnational aspect of this protest. How does the diaspora, the Sikh diaspora, fit in this story? Was there a flow of ideas or of resources between the protesters and the Sikh diaspora, I don't know, in Canada? And also, I wonder how much influence there was from the experience in other rural settings. For example, Mexican farmers and how they suffered following the NAFTA, with the inflow of corn, cheap corn, from the US. So was this also a factor? Did they look at what happened elsewhere, and did this inform the protest? So I don't know if you could talk a little bit about this transnational aspect of the protest.
Yes, very right. In the Sikh diaspora was also very active in staging protest whenever they got time. And we have also at the borders, we were also felt very much confident कि if they are it is going around the world actually. If we talk about the Sikh diaspora, mostly the youth or even the aged people who are they have left Punjab and now staying outside, they actually feel they see themselves feeling connected to Punjab only. And there is this saying, I would say, they are living in abroad or in foreign land, but they are staying in Punjab. So they have this connectivity with them. And mostly who have went to the abroad, to the Sikh diaspora I'm talking about, this is, I would say, this will be this is the first generation only that have parted away from the agriculture. So more or less, whoever is living or staying in some abroad in some countries like in Canada, we have seen they have their parents who are participating in the movement. So they have this first-hand information, first-hand feeling to share with their younger generation, the protesting farmers, and also the singing community. Also, the singers also, they have also they have also sang beautiful songs, and they were also were from the abroad. The songs were listened there. So through songs and through the connection of their first generation, they were connecting well with the ongoing with the at that time ongoing movement in Punjab. That's it, I think.
Yeah.
And also about the corn. So there was your question was about the corn in USA. So this concern was there, but actually the farmers have talked about the issue of corn, but they were saying that Indian government is buying cheap from them, but they are exporting in a higher prices from the USA. So this discussion was somewhere there.
Thank you, Navdeep. Now we have two more questions. Enrique, you haven't asked yet, so I will let Enrique, and then Diana again. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And thank you, Navdeep, for this really interesting presentation. I think I learned a lot. I had a similar question, or I wanted to ask you to talk a bit more about the global dimension of those protests. You mentioned, for example, that Greta Thunberg took up the issue and showed their solidarity with the farmers' protest, and kind of, yeah, I would like to know if this was helpful in any way, or if this kind of giving like global visibility to this topic was kind of helpful for this local protest, or was it rather not helpful and rather distracting the issue insofar? So because you also talked about radical actors going in there, so how did this kind of affect the movement?
The global visibility of the protest was there through the diaspora only, and the Punjabi diaspora was actively participating, and they were actually staging, and they were actually promoting the farmer protest more or less. So with the connection after the tweets of Brianna and the Greta Thunberg, the activism in India by the state that gone up. So the global visibility, the actors, the Indian state was more concerned about this thing, and they have totally labeled it, their tweets and the tweets by Rihanna and Greta, as the internal threat to the country. And as I have mentioned, they have also launched an FIR against Greta. But more or less what she have tweeted is around the support of the farmers only. So even the Indian state was also a bit uncomfortable about the global visibility of the protest. If I
thanks.
That
Yeah, Diana.
Yeah, sure. I was wondering a little bit like how the movement and the people think about the future of agriculture in India. Because I mean, we know that climate change is happening and the country is getting severely hotter. You face already a lot of water stress, right? So then it needs to be a lot of innovation, I guess, also instead of like doing really clever irrigation, right? And it comes to drip irrigation, there's a lot of innovative solutions that are of course expensive and need to being made available. So I wonder like how do people see the situation, if they are aware of climate change and that this will really impact like agriculture in India, and how they are going about it. How do they feel about it? Like, is this already a topic within the movement? What needs to be done, right? How they have to adapt. I'm pretty sure like agriculture has to change a lot in India in the future, coming from like, yeah, ways of irrigation I mentioned, or choosing new crops that can be grown even if we have like hotter climate within the country. How is this going on? Like what's there on the ground? Thanks.
Actually, in India, the land of agriculture is also reducing year by year, and the the younger generation, they don't find any future. They are like shifting their occupation. They don't want to be in agriculture anymore, and we can see the phenomena of vanishing villages. It was given by a scholar, Dipankar Gupta. So the villages are actually the younger generation. They don't want to be in agriculture anymore. And as I have also mentioned, there are serious climatic and ecological decline, the ecological factors that are impacting the agriculture. So people are totally dependent upon government actually to provide them some innovation so that they can do something better for their agriculture. And yes, they want to diversify as well, but they don't find anything profitable, any other crop more profitable than the cereal crop. The farmers actually want to diversify themselves. Instead, they are also, we can also see the migration pattern also. So they are also running away from agriculture, and those who are doing the agriculture, they also expect some innovations and some of they are hoping the Indian scientists to do some miracle in way or other so that they can somehow sustain doing agriculture, doing farming. But I don't find any crop diversification as so far, because the monocropping of particularly the belt, which I have talked about, the Punjab and Haryana belt, they are more into the cereal crops only. And year by year, season by season, more land is being added into this cropping pattern only.
Thanks, Navdeep. One question I think maybe as we gear towards the end of the talk is to looking ahead. What can you tell us about what to expect? Is there the movement after having achieved these main objectives? Are they organizing towards more ambitious goals going forward, and also sort of building up on the previous question, also how does the climate crisis inform their action moving forward? Are there new demands that include the effects of the climate crisis? I don't know. What could you tell us about what to expect going forward? Yeah, and then we have another question, but first, yeah, if you could answer that.
For now, unions are like they are at present they're feeling more stronger than earlier, and some of the unions have came into the electoral thing of the for the state, and a few who are more stronger unions, they also see they're seeing themselves as a pressure group upon the government. So they want to raise the already the crisis which is there among the agrarian societies of the region, and unions are completely focusing that only, like the farmer suicide. How can they reduce the farmer suicide? How can they reduce so that the timely payment can be made to the farmers? And around the climate action, I didn't find anything related to that, but the unions are more or less concerned about the inland water, I would say, because mostly the crops in the Punjab is rice, and they are using huge inland water, and that is being taken out for the crop annually and with the season by season, the crop season. So I don't find I don't think the unions are more according to me, I would say this is climate. I have not seen in the climate action perspective, but the main point is only about the inland water only, I would say. And there's one more thing the farmers are pointing, that is the remuneration they'll get after the climate change, when there is sometime hotter and their crops get destroyed, and sometimes the untimely rains or the hailstorms when they destroy the crops. So they simply ask for the remuneration from the government, and I don't find it further. I don't see anything beyond that.
Thanks, Navdeep. We have one more question from Grace. Grace, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just wondering how there was a lot of coverage about suicide rates with farmers in India, especially due to loans and lack of ability to pay, especially for the poor farmers. And I'm just curious how that then was covered by the protests, and also how the unions, agriculture unions, are dealing with that to ensure at least justice for more impoverished and more less economic and social connected societies and peoples of India.
The farmer suicide is very much of concern topic, I would say, because the incomes of the Indian farmers are very less. So to enhance their purchasing power, the loans are easily available on their lands, and the farmers get their loans, but their incomes is so less that they can't repay those loans with time. They can't repay their loans. So in the emotional and the family burden, the farmers then attempt the suicide. So the next generation might feel there won't be any burden of that loan on the next generation. So the farmers attempt suicides. And we have also seen the actions of unions that they have taken on the farmer suicide. They are more concerned about that there should be there should be uh, easy loan payment, and there should be less interest. And the farmer unions earlier also, they have demanded from the farmers, then they can the government should repay their loans from their own, instead of they asking from the farmers. And the one more thing the unions have asked the government, that there won't be any auction for the land on which the loan is being taken by the farmers. So the farm the banks, they easily give the loans, the credits in form of credits, and they give loan to farmers just to enhance their purchasing power. And since their incomes is very minimal, they can't repay those loans with interest rates. So there is a continuous burden on the farmers. So they kind of attempt suicide, so that the burden won't be went to the next generation, and they'll be the farmers, they'll be get easily out of this thing. The family will get out of the indebtedness of the loan they have taken.
Just a follow-up question. Thanks so much for that. As the government of India taken steps to address that social problem, especially around the suicide and the payment loans based on the demands of the farmers' movement?
See, everywhere in each state, whenever we see a government, whenever there are elections, mostly many of these parties, they come up with their this thing in hand. They'll repay the loans of the farmers if they'll form the government. The parties in their agenda, they give this thing to the farmers to get their easy votes. But I think whenever they come into power, they won't take it any seriously, and so this thing remains as it is. If we talk about Modi, also in 2014, he said this thing: he will free farmers from the loans they have taken, especially the small landowners. And he will, if he'll form government, then by 2022 he will develop the farmers' income, and things like these are promised by the government. And seeing the electoral profit, they announce it, but they don't make it at the ground. Because everyone is concerned about this thing. Everyone knew it. There is this thing going. Farmers' income is very less. They are taking loans. They are in debt, and everyone knew it. But they can't. They're not putting up enough efforts to get out of this thing, to take them out.
Well, thank you so much, Navdeep, for this very comprehensive explanation of the protests, the different dimensions, and I think it was very interesting, very informative. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's very late. It's also your birthday today, so happy birthday to Navdeep, and thank you for taking the time here, spending that with us, sharing a little bit from your studies and your experience. I would like to thank everyone who attended. I'd like to remind that we have this lecture series once a month. Usually we try to have it every last Thursday of the month. You can subscribe to our newsletter. The link is here in the chat, and then you become informed of the upcoming lectures. The next one, as I said, will be with Gina Cortez Valderrama on gender just climate solutions. at the end of March. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope to see you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Navdeep.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.